unemployment is the most critical thing. And when we actually then saying we will actually get onto the bandwagon to solve other people's burning issues without that reciprocated in terms of how we solve our burning issues internally, and the one contradicts the other, it just doesn't make sense.
South Africa has long been dependent on coal as a source of energy, but there is a big push towards renewables. Should we be following this path? Joining me to discuss is Chris Hart. He is an economist and an investment advisor with Impact Investment Africa. But before we jump into this video, please do remember to hit that like button and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Chris Hart, welcome to the CRA.
No, thank you very much for the invitation. I think you're quite right. Coal has always been a critical part of our energy mix. I think up to 70%, even though we're an oil importer, coal has provided the actual backbone of our energy needs in the form of mainly electricity production.
All right, but Chris, we are seeing this move away from coal now. A lot of international financial institutions are refusing to finance new coal builds, and there's a big push towards renewables. But now, is this a potential risk for South Africa? We're dealing this week, as we were recording on the 14th of April, rolling blackouts throughout the country. Are we not neglecting the basics here, the need for consistent, reliable, and cheap energy as the foundation for our economic development?
Exactly. And I think my view also is dependent, you could say, on a well-functioning Eskom. But the fact that Eskom is falling apart doesn't actually take away from the actual argument. From an energy point of view, technically, nuclear can provide great source of baseload energy. The renewables tend not to be good for baseload, right? And this is the problem. They're not stable energy sources. Coal is an enormously important resource. And in some countries, they would, like Brazil, for instance, they're very well endowed in hydroelectric source of electricity, which of course is one of the best renewables, but hydro can also provide very good baseload electricity. One of the things is no modern economy can function without electricity. It's one of the reasons why I question, the size of the Nigerian economy. How can it be a bigger economy than South Africa's, producing, a third of the electricity that we produce? It means that there's extraordinary efficiencies in energy delivery and usage in a country like Nigeria, which you just don't get the sense of, in that sense. But nevertheless, be that as it may, for South Africa's economic growth and economic well-being, you need electricity. And coal has always provided South Africa with an energy competitive advantage in the sense that we had cheap, reliable, abundant electricity. And coal was the mainstay of that. We did augment it with a bit of nuclear with Kuberg, and there are a few sources of hydropower, but they're not big. The mainstay is coal, and from a technical point of view, it's actually very difficult for South Africa to move away from it. To say, okay, we'll rely on solar energy and wind energy is basically a cocktail party. Throwaway. Technically, you cannot really provide baseload electricity from that. Where we are now almost being forced to move away from coal, we're also forced to give up our competitive advantages from an economic point of view. Now, pollution is a problem in the world, and I agree. But the one problem that I have is that by signing into these agreements and contracts to get rid of coal, we're helping to solve what other people see are their biggest issues. So in Germany, they can see pollution as a big issue in their lives. In our lives, unemployment is the most critical thing. And when we actually then saying we will actually get onto the bandwagon to solve other people's burning issues without that reciprocated in terms of how we solve our burning issues internally, and the one contradicts the other, it just doesn't make sense. We cannot be throwing people out of work because we just simply don't have the right electricity and the right electricity costs, for instance, and we then no longer can actually be in business.
One of the issues is that a lot of these industrialized Western countries are promoting this shift to renewables. But if you look at the economic development of China, of India, that has been mostly coal-fired energy that they've used to grow those economies. And it's only really wealthy countries that can afford some of these new technologies. We're still on that developmental growth path. We still need to get to a point of wealth. And as you highlight, our biggest problem at the moment is unemployment, which is a direct consequence of our low growth.
Part of that low growth problem is, in fact, our electricity problem, which was self-inflicted. We can't blame anybody else for the problems of Eskom. That is a self-inflicted problem. Let's say we can fix Eskom, right? It just doesn't make sense that we don't use our coal. A country like Germany spent centuries utilizing their coal resource that's largely depleted and that sort of thing. And now they're almost, it makes sense for them to move, natural move away from coal now that they're running out of coal or run out of coal. And then you say, okay, but at the same time, we've got coal, plenty of it, and we've got to leave that as a stranded asset in the ground, unutilized, while we actually adopt energy solutions that simply, don't meet the grade in terms of baseload, and I emphasize baseload energy production. That is, I think, the biggest problem. Even when it comes to vehicles, it's difficult for South Africa, to go with electric vehicles with the technology that we've got at the moment, because you can't say if you want to take a trip to Durban and your car will only get you to Harrismith, and then you've got to actually charge it up for half a day, before you can actually carry on with the trip. That simply is not good enough. If you're only in short distances in urban conditions, an electric vehicle can work. But a lot of these so-called green solutions are actually not that green when one actually digs into the back of it. So one's got to also be careful of people pushing agendas that just don't make sense, the overall mix. I understand that we've got to try and do something about cutting down our footprint, etc. on Earth. That makes sense. But I think there's a lot of things that don't make sense to me in the whole debate. And certainly when you're committing economic suicide, if you like, or you're putting a ball and chain around your own economy in terms of these mixes, it doesn't sit well. I think when one goes to some of these alternative energies, wind, for instance, is not that ecologically friendly. For instance, there's a huge ecological problem with windmills, but also with batteries, with electric vehicles. And so it doesn't make sense to sit there and actually carve out a single culprit. I think one needs to really allow the full energy mix to make sense, right? And rather try and use it more, coal more economically and also in a greener way. In other words, less pollution, rather than just throw the whole baby out with the bathwater.
Chris Hart, thank you very much. Let's hand over to you, our audience. Do you think it is the right thing to move away from coal towards renewables? Leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. Also, if you enjoyed this analysis, you might want to check out this video over here. And also, please remember to subscribe to the channel. You can do so by clicking here. My name is David Ansara. This is the CRA. Until next time, take care.